Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome this evening. It is late on November 2nd, 2016. This is Christopher Aaron, and we are going to look at the latest price action in gold and silver. There have been some nice surges over the last week or so. We will put that all into perspective. The gold market is winding up. It's still facing some important tests here coming up. We will look at that all, and we will also look at what's happening with the U.S. election, because I think this is going to impact the markets to a greater or lesser extent depending on the results of the election. So let's take a look at the latest publicly available data as far as who was leading the election. Now, there was a Fed meeting today, and this was really glossed over because of the election. However, I just want to make this point, and as we know, the Fed left interest rates unchanged. However, keep this in mind. Interest rates are still at all-time multi-generational lows. And the entire time that these interest rates are being held at these lows, it continuously requires the Fed to print money in order to suppress rates, because they must buy the short end of the bond curve in order to force yields down, which is the inverse of the price. So that's how that works. The money is continuously being printed even when they don't change the rate. So let's just keep that in mind in the background. As we switch to looking at the election data here, the most recent national polls that are coming out between the Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton and the Republican Donald Trump is showing a narrowing of the race here just in the last couple of weeks, now down to a 1.7% lead for Hillary Clinton. So this has come down. It's not quite the closest that it's been. There was even a 1 or 2 day spike here in August when Trump actually had a nominal lead. But this is the closest, basically, within the range of some of the closest polling data that there has been, between 1 and 2 points of a tie. So it's very interesting to note that this surge in Trump's popularity has actually coincided over the last week or so with the surge in gold. And the inverse of that has been that the U.S. dollar has been falling rather strongly over the last couple of days. Of course, it had surged over the last month or so. But basically, as Trump has been gaining in the polls here, we've seen the dollar fall and we've seen the price of gold rise. Let's keep that in mind as we switch over to look at the electoral voting system here. Now, if you're not familiar with U.S. politics, just as a brief backdrop, you should know that we do not use a direct general election system here. In other words, the popular majority candidate does not always win the election. We do have this electoral system in place, for better or worse. This dates back to the founding of the country and was essentially designed to allow some of the less populated states, essentially in some of the farming areas of the country, so that they would not be underrepresented. And it actually gives them a slightly disproportional weighting relative to the population. So it basically does not allow any candidates to completely ignore the rural areas of the country and only stop at the major cities, let's say on the West Coast and here in the Northeast, to win the election. So that's the background of the electoral system. It's not perfect, but probably no system is. So it's what we have for now. Anyway, to look at this, you've got in just the last 3 or 4 days, there have been some significant shifts here in the electoral makeup. You've had a number of states go from leaning toward Clinton here, which is shown in the light blue, to toss-ups. Most notably, Florida, North Carolina, Virginia is a big one. Pennsylvania is now a toss-up. New Hampshire is now a toss-up. Colorado is now a toss-up. So a number, if you were to look at this map from just a week ago, most of these, I think with the exception of North Carolina, most of these were leaning toward Clinton. They're now coming back into the middle. As we look at some of the strongholds, of course, some of the Democratic strongholds along the West Coast here in the Northeast, and basically the entire middle section of the country leaning toward Trump at this point. So how does this look from the breakdown of the total votes right now? If the election were to happen today, you'd be looking at 226 electoral votes for Clinton, 180 for Trump, with 132 currently toss-up. So no one has enough to win. You need 270 electoral votes to win. So it will come down to these toss-up states, which is why they're campaigning heavily in this area. Now, I personally do not affiliate with either of the two major parties. I really think that the two-party system as it stands is flawed and really narrows the box, so to speak, as far as people's perception of what is possible. I think there's so much more that is possible to think about than just having to define ourselves as either a Democrat or a Republican. I would call myself an independent. I have some libertarian leanings, but not completely affiliating with the Libertarian Party as it currently stands. And I do not, for that matter, believe that the current Libertarian candidate, Gary Johnson, would necessarily be the best person for the job, even if I tend to lean toward some of the Libertarian ideas. That's just my personal sense of things, but I do, as you know, want to focus on what the markets think and what the markets are saying, because ultimately, if we do not pay attention to what is happening in the rest of the world around us, we can get steamrolled or blindsided by what is going on. So right now, Clinton's still in the lead, but this lead is narrowing. And I will tell you that if Trump pulls off this victory somehow by getting enough of these toss-up states, the gray states here, I think you may be looking at something that would happen to the US dollar similar, perhaps not to the same magnitude exactly, but similar in respect to the Brexit vote due to the uncertainty. I mean, immediately after the Brexit vote, the British pound fell 15% against the dollar, against the euro. And why was that? Nothing had changed on that day. So why is it that the British pound fell so quickly on that day? It was due to uncertainty. Like I said before, the markets hate uncertainty. And that's exactly what Brexit meant, because no one really knew, and still no one knows exactly what is going to happen as far as the implementation of that vote. So I think that if Trump, this wildcard candidate, were to pull off this election, there would be such a sense of uncertainty as to what he might do in his years in office that you might see quite a strong drop in the value of the dollar or in the U.S. stock market or in both. And conversely, a surge, perhaps not $110 as we saw the day of the Brexit vote, but perhaps quite a strong surge, $50 or $70 in gold if he were to pull off the victory. Right now, the markets are basically pricing in Clinton to win. But if that gets upset here, I think we might be looking at a lot of uncertainty in the markets, which will be expressed by selling in the general markets, and most likely a rise in the price of gold. So this is how this is now. There are 6 days left. This is going to be pretty interesting to watch next Tuesday. Let's look at the metals here. Just quickly, over the last 3 days, we've seen this surge in gold crossing back above 1,300 today, falling back below it for the close, just below. Now, if there was not an election coming up, and if I was just looking at the technicals as they stand now, I would tell you that I think this is a short-term top that gold is putting in. But with the uncertainty, It's almost like an anything could happen kind of situation right now. I'll show you why I think this would be a short-term top in gold coming up otherwise. Silver performing nicely, coming back above 1850, hitting just below 1870 actually for a brief moment, and then coming back to close near 1851. Let's put this in perspective. Excuse me, this slide is mislabeled. This is the latest price of gold here, not the GDX that we're looking at. We're looking at gold bullion prices. We can see the bounce that we had from the support zone. Basically, the highest level within the support zone that I was looking for several weeks ago has successfully acted as support. We can see that moving away from the support zone. So that's a bullish sign. This basically negates the possibility of this turning into a head and shoulders top pattern. You have a clear multi-week bottom that formed here. A head and shoulders top would have required this fairly quickly to come back down to the 1200 zone. So where does that leave gold now? Gold is in an area of important resistance. 1305 was this level that was hit here in April. It backed off. It was hit again in early June, backed off, and then finally broke above on the Brexit vote. And then this level acted as support 4 or 5 times here before failing. So you had a lot of people selling here. You had a lot of stop losses getting hit. It resulted in a mini washout, a $50 loss in just over 48 hours here. All things considered, in technical analysis, when you have an important break of a support zone like this, most likely there are going to be other sellers who show up here. And they are either going to be people who bought at this level and say, now get me out. I'm back to even, so get me out. And that causes the short-term top. Or you can have short sellers who say, all right, this area failed. Let's get ready to short gold here again. So that explains that phenomenon. So what I think, if I was to be charting this normally, without the election coming up, what I would expect is for gold to back off here, come somewhere down into the middle of the resistance and the support, and gear up. We are still waiting to gear up for this long-term downtrend to be broken at some point, either later this year or early in the spring. However, with the election coming up, just keep in mind there is this wild card, this major wild card, if Trump were to pull off this victory. I'm not predicting that, but the polls are getting a lot tighter. So let us keep that in mind. Switching over to silver. Silver is basically negating a lot of technical support levels that we had drawn over the last 6 months. For example, this rising trend line here from the bottom that was hit here a second time, here a third time, negated that to the downside and has now broken back up above it, closing just around 1850. So it basically came back just briefly below the lower end of the support zone and now has broken briefly above this support zone. If gold is finding a short-term top in this region, silver will also be finding a short-term top. The big line to watch right now is this downtrend in silver from 21.25 back in June, early July. And the downtrend coming right here. If it were to be hit today, it would be happening just above $19 here. This is the big one. But I'll tell you what, unless something earth-shattering happens in the silver market, silver will not be breaking this line until gold breaks its long-term downtrend in the last slide, that magenta-colored line. I expect those two things are going to happen at more or less the same time. And for that matter, some of the weakness that we've seen in silver relative to gold at this juncture over the last several weeks, for example, is telling me that perhaps gold might break its downtrend a couple days or a couple weeks before silver breaks this one. that will be all right because eventually silver will play catch up. But that's just what I'm expecting right now. Aside from this support zone here, basically the only line that we're watching is this downtrend here for silver. When that is broken, we will have a very strong indicator that this was the bottom for this correction, and we'll be looking at a system of attempting to make new highs probably within the same amount of time period that this downtrend formed. 3 to 4 months. We might be looking at a 3 to 4 month grinding rise back up to test these highs again. There was the key. Thank you very much for watching. This will be exciting to watch. So the next update will be a week from today after the election, and we'll see what happens with that. Premium research does come out every weekend, every Monday morning, and whenever there is a flash update, it goes straight to your inbox. It doesn't wait for every Wednesday. We cover the gold, silver, GDX miners, currencies, buy and sell signals, everything that is impacting the precious metals. I also do individual consultations for anyone who has a unique situation that they want an independent perspective on. Thank you very much. I will see you this time next week.